All work and no play makes Geno a dull boy. All work and no play makes Geno a dull boy. All work and no play makes Geno a dull boy. All work and no play makes Geno a dull boy. All work and no play makes Geno a dull boy. All work and no play makes Geno a dull boy. All work and no play makes Geno a dull boy. All work and no play makes Geno a dull boy. All work and no play makes Geno a dull boy. All work and no play makes Geno a dull boy. All work and no play makes Geno a dull boy. All work and no play makes Geno a dull boy. All work and no play makes Geno a dull boy. All work and no play makes Geno a dull boy. All work and no play makes Geno a dull boy. Oh, hi there. Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome to an all-new Talkin Movies. As always, I am your host, the real Geno Reynolds, and today we're going to be talking about a sequel to a movie that came out in 1980, the widely seen classic The Shining, starring Jack Nicholson. We're going to be talking about Dr. Sleep. Before I begin, I want to talk about my history with The Shining. I don't have much of one. I probably watched The Shining 20 years ago, and I don't remember it that well. It didn't have this big impression on me like it did a lot of people. So I hadn't seen it in like 2 decades. So I went back and watched it again before going to see Dr. Sleep. And really, I didn't think much differently about it. It's a good movie. It's a creepy movie. I understand the love for it, but for me, it was good. I liked it. But I don't have this big time attachment to it. So going into Dr. Sleep, I didn't have these massive expectations, I think, that other people did. Let me just say this, though. That doesn't matter, because Dr. Sleep is awesome. And I tell you what Dr. Sleep did for The Shining, for me, is it made me like The Shining even more. So the setup to Dr. Sleep is, it starts off showing parts of The Shining. Even though I think, and I'll just say this now, I think the makers of the movie did a wise decision that anything involving the past, they recast. So they're not trying to do some weird, creepy CG stuff, trying to recreate older characters or make characters younger or anything like that. I thought that was a wise decision because I would have felt that they would have tried to recast some and do CG for others and things like that. I just don't know if it would have worked as well. I was fine with the recastings. I mean, The Shining came out in 1980. It's 2019. It's been a while. So I was fine with the way they did things. So I'll just say that now, get that out of the way. Recasting was fine. It made sense to me, and it worked for me. It was a good way of retelling the past stuff without using just clips from The Shining. And I tell you what, the scenes that they did recreate from at the beginning of the movie, the stuff they did show you, it worked great. The look of it and the feel of it. They used The Shining music. There was that feel of The Shining, and it worked really well. So it starts there, and then we see what has happened to Danny, now Dan, when he grows up. We see what's happened to him a little bit from when he was a kid to an adult. The movie does jump around in time a little bit. It goes from 1980 to like 2011, I believe it was, or something like that, 2011, 2012, and then it goes to 2019. And a lot has happened to Danny, and let's just say he's gone through some rough times. We don't learn about everything right at the beginning. They do reveal what happened, a lot of what happened to him during the movie, whenever we get introduced to other characters and he's talking to them. But we see the journey that he's gone on in I think it was 2011. We see that he's dealing with alcoholism the same as his father did, and he needs a change. And he meets up with a friend that helps him get on the straight and narrow. And in 2019, Dan is working at basically a hospice, where he's using his power, The Shining, to help older people that are dying kind of have peace before they die, kind of show them that death is not the end. They're scared, and he is helping ease their pain and letting them know and showing them that death is not the end. And he's comforting a lot of people doing that. He's living in this apartment that his friend hooked him up with whenever he came to town and got cleaned up. And he starts seeing this wall is basically a blackboard. I guess the previous tenant was like a teacher or something where he could write on the blackboard. I can't remember exactly what it was. And all of a sudden messages start showing up on the blackboard. And it turns out that it's a little girl that has The Shining as well. And she's communicating with Dan through the blackboard, and if he writes on the blackboard, she can see it. Okay, so that's their setup. Then we have to set up the cult. The cult, they're basically this wandering group of Shining eaters. That's about the best way to put it. They track down children with The Shining, and they eat their fear and screams, their pain. They make the kids scream in pain, and you see this smoke come out, and they eat the smoke, and that makes them live longer. The phrase is "eat well, live long," and they're led by Rose the Hat, who is played by Rebecca Ferguson, and I'll talk about her more in a minute. But basically, there's different kinds of shines. You have ones that are, I think they called them pushers, where they can kind of tell people what to do. There's some that can track other people with Shining. Then there's some that have multiple powers that we learn about later. But Rebecca Ferguson's character can kind of track other people with the shine, and she sets her sights on Abra, who is the little girl that's communicating with Dan, and that's how all those stories come together. There's not much more I want to tell you about this movie. This movie was think about this. Think about all the sequels that have come out that have come out like years and years and years later. Okay, some really work and some don't. Most of them, if the longer you wait, the harder it is to have a sequel. I mean, there's rare examples. The Blade Runner 2049 is great. It's almost a perfect sequel. Doctor Sleep is about as perfect of a sequel as you could hope for a movie that has come out this far away from the original. I don't think there was much in this movie that I did not like. From the performances, from the feel of the movie, to the callbacks to The Shining that they made, the scares, everything. Everything about this movie I really dug. And for someone that doesn't have this deep love for The Shining, that really surprised me. I went into this thinking it's going to be there. I had a feeling that they were going to just make another Shining. And again, the stuff that they used from The Shining, it worked. It fit perfectly because not only did they use that stuff, but they expanded on the mythos of the power of The Shining. They introduced new characters, new powers, they added on to the mythos, and that's the one thing you can always want in a good sequel, is that you add on to the story. You don't just rehash. I mean, sometimes a good rehash sequel is fine, but not for something like this. When it's something that has this kind of a deep dive of story, where there's all these different elements, you want more information, you want more mythos, and this movie gives it to you, and it has it in spades. So when it came to using the stuff from The Shining, it was fantastic. I loved the callbacks that they used. It all made sense. When it came to the characters, again, I talked about the recastings of older characters. That stuff was fine. And forgive me, I still got a cold. Ewan McGregor as Dan Torrance. I mean, he's Ewan McGregor. You get what you expect from Ewan McGregor. He's great. And you can, from the times where he's dealing with alcoholism to the times he's cleaned up, just everything about his character, he does a really good job at. I mean, I expected no less from Ewan McGregor, and he gives it to you. Relative newcomer, Kylie Curran, who plays Abra. She's fantastic. Okay, one thing, I have to get into this to talk about her. One thing I really liked about this movie, okay, most horror movies, think about it, even the original Shining. Okay, think about this. It's usually, bad guys mess with good guys, bad guys mess with good guys, bad guys mess with good guys, until good guys finally fight back. I mean, that is a relative description of a lot of horror movies. It's like the bad guys mess with the good guys until the good guys finally learn how to fight them or decide to fight back or whatever. I can think of the I saw a trailer for that Black Christmas the other day, which I think it's a remake, where the good girls are getting messed with, and then all of a sudden it's like, we're gonna fight back. It's a trope, right? Well, what I liked about this movie is not only did the bad guys mess with the good guys, but boy, do the good guys mess with the bad guys. Just when you think the bad guys have an advantage, and don't get me wrong, the bad guys do some pretty crappy stuff. They are terrible. I mean, they are just terrible people. But the good guys mess with them as well. I don't want to spoil the scene, but as I said, the character of Rose the Hat can track other people with shine. And so she can get in their minds and everything. And let's just say that she messes with the wrong character more than once. And it's just neat to see it's neat to have bad guys that are vulnerable to the entire movie. You think, most bad guys, again, these movies, they're always really powerful until the good guys finally fight back. Well, you've got good guys with powers too. So, and I'm not saying the good guys just totally one up the bad guys the entire time. No, no, no. They have their fair share of losses as well. But the bad guys, let's just say, again, they're messing with the wrong people. And it's fantastic. I loved it. So, Abra, the character of Abra, plays a part of that. Her character, you keep finding out that she's really powerful. We'll just say that. Cliff Curtis is in this. He's the friend of Dan Torrance, the one that helps clean him up. He does really well. I mean, Cliff Curtis is just a very capable actor, and he's a great addition to this. For me, though, the star of the show is Rebecca Ferguson as Rose the Hat. I'll just put it like this. I don't know if I've ever been so creeped out and turned on at the same time. Her character is so charismatic, but just so scary. She was in a movie not too long ago where she was the villain, and it was very generic, and it's like, man, I know she's better than this. They had her playing, I can't remember what the movie was. I think it was that King Arthur movie with the young King Arthur, like the reincarnate King Arthur. And she was the villain, and it was like so generic, and I'm like, man, she could do better than this. Well, this is what I was wanting from her as a villain. Because you can tell why she's the leader of this cult. She's charming, she's beautiful, but she's also ruthless and scary, and there's just so much going on there that she's given a lot to play with, and she is fantastic. She's probably one of my favorite villains this year, because again, there's just so many layers there that, I can see why the people follow her, but I can see why people are terrified of her as well. And she, again, also has to show a vulnerable side, because, again, the good guys fight back. So that, by far, for me, Rebecca Ferguson is kind of the all-star of the movie as the villain. But that being said, that is not putting down the other performances, because I did dig all the other performances. Some of her followers are interesting as well. There's Crow Daddy, there's Snakebite Andy. The setup for Snakebite Andy, you see it a little bit in the trailer. It's a blonde girl walking out of a movie theater. That's the setup for Snakebite Andy. So I mean, there's just so many interesting little characters in this cult as well. But then again, the all-star is Rose the Hat, but then again, all of them together, it's creepy when they're feeding on someone's fear. Just how, like, they seem like just chill traveling people, because they've kind of got this traveling cult where they go around the country finding kids with shine, and they kill them and eat their fear. And they seem like such chill people until they're really hungry, because they do talk about how these characters they're not eating as well as they used to. There used to be more people with the shine, and that's why they want to track down Abrek, because apparently she's really powerful, and it would be big for them to get a hold of a kid with the shine like her. One of their victims, I will say this also, there's a bit of a cameo. I don't know if I'll call it a cameo, but I would. I guess I could call it a cameo of who plays one of their victims. I was just a little surprised that this actor would play this kind of bit part. It was just kind of neat. It's like, oh, hey, there's so-and-so. I had to think about it for a second. I'm like, wait, is that so-and-so? But yeah, man, there's really not much more I want to say about this movie. The story It is a very big time slow burn. But I'll tell you what, it did not feel like 2.5 hours. I was like, man, it's over already, and then I was surprised how late it was. I didn't feel like I was cheated out of the story or anything. Again, this movie is fantastic, but it's just 2.5 hours seemed like it flew by, and they do have a lot of different story elements and a lot of stuff's going on, but it's easy enough to follow. The story is interesting. The characters are interesting. It's a really good battle between good and evil because it's not just one side getting over on the other. I love the acting in this movie. The callbacks to The Shining are great. I went with my mom, who's a big Stephen King fan, and she read the book. I have not. And she remembers it being a pretty faithful adaptation. If you have read the book more recently than she did, and you see this movie, let me know if it was. I'm really curious. Please don't spoil things for people because this movie is worth not spoiling. But I want to know how much of a good adaptation that it is. I'm just really curious about that. But yeah, I highly recommend this movie to see it in the theaters. Even if you didn't love The Shining, now if you hated The Shining, this might not change your mind. But if you just thought The Shining was a good movie, or you really love The Shining, you are going to love Dr. Sleep. And really, that's all. I just say go see it in the theaters. Highly recommended. I mean, yeah, you could wait to rent it. I wouldn't, because just the things that happen in this movie, the imagery, just the sounds and everything else, it is definitely something you want to experience in a theater. That's going to be all for this edition of Talkin Movies. If you like what you've heard here, please subscribe to the Real Geno YouTube channel. Like this video. If you have anything to say about Dr. Sleep, whether it's a good adaptation, how you felt about it, please feel free to leave a comment in the section below. Till next time, I'm your host, the Real Geno Reynolds. See you later. Because you know, all work and no play makes Geno a dull boy.